Thank you, Peter. And welcome everybody to this webcast. Thank you for joining. So I will give you a brief overview of what Clean TeQ Water is about. So first, overall, what we do is water treatment. What we build is water treatment plant. And you see what we do on the top line of this slide. You see these pictures. Those are the type of technology to customers, and that's most of our business. And that's certainly the area where we're looking to grow in the future. Within our company, it's worthwhile mentioning a few other areas where we have specific expertise or which are a little bit differentiated from our overall technical solutions provision. So one is metal recovery. We still have very deep expertise in metal recovery. That's for historical reasons, and it's an area of expertise that we're looking to apply with customers as well. And we're in discussions with various customers where we don't only treat their wastewater, we're also looking to recover valuable metals from that waste. A second area is graphene membranes. We'll discuss that in a bit more detail in the next slide. And a third one is encapsulated bacteria. These are a way to intensify bacterial processes to treat wastewater, especially nutrients. And we have our own factory where we produce those lenses. You see lenses in this picture here. So we use it in plants like the ones you see on top, but we're also looking to sell that directly into the market as a consumable. So graphene membranes then is something we haven't talked about a lot over the last few years, but it's been a development that's been ongoing for quite a while. And because we expect to be ready for the market soon, meaning in the next, say, 1 year or 1 or 2 years, it's worthwhile to already mentioning it in this webinar. So graphene membranes focus on the micropollutants market. You must have heard that a little bit if you follow the water sector, for example, in PFAS and in pollutants that disrupt hormones, for example. It's a very big market and it's growing fast. And the primary method to take out those pollutants is membranes. And that market is growing very fast as well. So as you see, that will be a couple of $1 billion market. Already is a few $1 billion and will grow very fast. What we've been doing, what Nomadic has been doing, so Nomadic is 100% owned by Clean TeQ Water. What Nomadic has been doing is develop a membrane specifically focused on this market based on graphene oxide or graphene. And graphene is this new modern and fancy material that provides a way to improve membranes substantially. What it does, it's allowed for much higher flux, so much higher flow rates at similar energy cost. Which is to say you can save substantial energy by using these membranes. And the second very large advantage is that cleaning will be much easier when you use graphene. So that's just the preparation. It is run as a separate company, so we do share obviously expertise, and it's useful that we have a big organization or a sizable organization that talks to the market. But otherwise, this is a separate company in which we plan to put into the market this new type of membranes and get a share of that very large membrane market. So going back sort of to the other business, our main business at the moment, where we sell integrated technology solutions. And there I should introduce resin technology. We do have a portfolio of technologies, but within that, continuous ion exchange is probably the most important one. And this is a technology that has originally been developed in Russia for taking out or for recovering, mining basically, high value metals. And that technology has been bought by Clean TeQ a long time back. And since then, we've been developing it for other applications. And that includes other metal applications, so taking out other types of metals, but also very much water treatment. Because ultimately, when you treat water, what you do is you take pollutants out of water. So we use a similar technology to specifically target certain pollutants. And the benefits that creates is because we can be very targeted, we then also create much lower volumes of secondary waste, which is a big problem in the wastewater sector. So we hold a lot of patents and we have a lot of know-how around this resin technology. And also as a final step for the introduction of what we do, perhaps good to start with an example, because we often get the question, what does it look like, your technology solution? What does it mean exactly? So it looks like the picture you see in the back. So it looks like a big processing plant. And you see these big columns in here, the resins are in those columns. So the patents are around these kind of installations, and a lot of our know-how is around these kind of installations. And what we then do is we bring benefits by using a very different method of treating water than existing methods. So in this specific example, which is an example of a plant in Victoria, our benefit is twofold. So one is we reduce the OPEX, and another very important one is that by treating it the way we treat, by specifically targeting certain pollutants and not just all the pollutants, we create solids as a byproduct, but we don't create any saline brines. And that's a big problem in itself. And we'll talk about it a little bit more later. But avoiding these saline brines as a secondary waste, and therefore also avoiding brine ponds, is in many cases sort of the holy grail of these wastewater treatment plants. Because once you create these saline brines, you need to create brine ponds. That's more and more illegal. There's a risk in there, and it's obviously an environmental footprint problem. Our footprint then, so we're looking to promote, or we are promoting our solutions across the world in the areas and in the sectors where they apply the best. We have an office, our head office is in Melbourne. We also have an office in Beijing. We produce the biocleanses I mentioned earlier in our own factory in Tianjin. And then we're working with partners. So we have a number of partners we work with around the world. Specifically worth mentioning perhaps is Multitech, with whom we did a number of projects already. And Nesser, that's a more recent agreement we signed to jointly promote our technologies in the oil and gas sector, mostly again for brines in that sector. Our target market, so where do our solutions apply specifically or most suitably? That's three areas that are all in itself very large, where water treatment plays an important role. One is industrial, and in industrial, these brines that I mentioned earlier are specifically challenging. And for those brines, we have specific solutions to either avoid them or reduce them or clean them, because you need to do something with brines once they're created. And secondly is municipal reuse, which means municipal water treatment is a very common and sort of traditional technology, but you can, instead of putting that water into the sea or into the river, you can reuse that water. So that's the second sector we are focused on. And then finally, a little bit more close to where we come from, so close to our origins, mining wastewater and metal recovery, where almost all of our technology solutions apply very well. A little bit more detail on the markets we focused on. So when you look at markets and you go a little bit deeper, you also have to think about what pollutants are we talking about here. So one very important one across the market today is nitrate. And nitrate is becoming increasingly an issue for a number of reasons. One is background nitrate concentrations are increasing. And that's mostly in areas where there's been agriculture for a number of decades now. So you get fertilizers, these fertilizers go into the ground. And over time, that slowly increases nitrate background concentrations. At the same time, we have the opposite trend, which is that governments and science really are getting increasingly concerned about even low levels of nitrate. And that mimics a bit the discussion we're seeing for all kinds of other micropollutants. There's an increasing realization that increasing background concentrations, even if they're small, of certain pollutants are actually fairly damaging to our health. So these two trends, underlying growth of nitrate and stricter regulation, creates an issue in many places, because suddenly you need to remove these final trace elements or trace amounts of nitrate. And traditional methods are not very good at that. Traditional biology can remove some of the nitrate, but cannot remove the final amounts. So our technology, and specifically our BioCleanse and our BioNext technology, is very suitable to remove those last amounts of nitrate in an efficient way. Municipal, I just mentioned, is an important sector for us. Municipal effluent it's actually a bit of a waste of resources that everywhere around the world we treat municipal wastewater. We treat it to a very high quality level and then we dispose of it. So in areas where there's drought or where there's a shortage of water, what you really want to do is take that water, further treat it, and then reuse it. And that's exactly what's happening in countries that are very advanced in water treatment. So Israel is a great example. In Singapore, they also have recognized this as the easiest and quickest way to increase water availability. And the rest of the world, especially the areas that are dry, like Southern Europe, California and other places in the US and also Australia are recognizing this. We should all be doing that when there's water shortages. Is the first thing to do is look at municipal effluent. So we're doing that. We have a technology that's very suitable for that, and we're in fact working today with Townsville, where we've been selected in a tender to provide a large-scale recycling plant to do exactly that. And then finally, mining. Mining is a very diverse field, of course, with many water challenges. One is water shortages, which is often a problem. Another big challenge is, of course, the wastewater or the processed water you get out of mines or out of mine processing tend to be very hard to treat. And in mining, you have the example of these brine ponds or these tailings with a lot of liquid in it that provides a real safety risk and an environmental risk. So it's a sector we feel very comfortable because the problems are challenging and because our technology solutions are very much focused on solving those problems. So that brings us now to our current set of technology solutions. These solutions are mostly applied at large scale around the world already in our own applications because they're all unique. And we're also running multiple pilots for many of those solutions at the moment. So each of these things does a different thing. I'm not going into detail. You can perhaps read it here and otherwise look at our website. And the reason we cover a spectrum of solutions is because that's often what the customer requires. So it's often very hard to take one of those and go to a customer because that becomes a very binary discussion. But more often than not, a customer needs two of those solutions together, and we're able to help customers with their problems and provide the optimal solution. And some recent case examples. So on the top, you see 3 plants we have handed over or are close to be handed over. They're all sort of in the mining and brine treatment sector, 2 of the sectors that I mentioned earlier. And then on the bottom, you see 3 contracts we've signed recently. That's actually not true. The 2 on the bottom are ones we signed recently. We signed 3 contracts since January this year. And the one on the left lower corner is the example from Townsville that I mentioned before. That's a project we basically started where we've done detailed design and where we're still in discussion on the EPC contract for the large-scale plant to build the actual large-scale plant. Also on size, you can see the numbers, right? What we typically see is that projects that we focus on will be 3 to 4 million. Some are a bit smaller here, but some of them are in their next phase or have some expansion to it. So you will typically see that the lowest size is really around 1.5 to 2 million. And that goes up to 4 or 5 typically, but you do have much larger projects. So you have projects of 50 million, 20 million, 25 million. They're more rare, but they're certainly there for almost all of our solutions. So that brings us to our strategy. And I think the introduction I just gave has probably given you hopefully given you a clear picture already of the strategy. The core of our strategy is really built around our set of innovative technologies. That's what we've been working on a lot over the last years to develop and to further improve. And that's also the basis on which we're winning projects and on which we're very confident about our prospect for future growth. Secondly, we do, of course, try to match those solutions with problems. And those problems are very much right now in large sectors. And that's why we go after them. And that's also the pneumatic geomembranes is a good example of that. That's partly driven by an observation that the market needs a better solution to an existing problem. And then finally, our business model. Right now, we provide these integrated technology solutions, these integrated plants that you've seen in some of the pictures. But while we're installing that, we are building a consumables business on the back of that. And that's because almost all of our plants include those resins or the bioclans. And obviously, if we get our geomembranes in the market, we will also have another consumable business in that product. And then thirdly, there's BOT, which some people might have heard of. In some countries, that's very popular already, sometimes called water as a service. It's certainly something we're also interested in. It logically follows a little bit having a bigger footprint around the world. So you first want your plants being operating in various sectors and in various regions. And on the back of that, you would then typically engage with customers that are looking for a different solution and looking to you to invest and then pay you per ton of water treated or per ton of water recycled. And then finally, to put it back into context, the company Clean TeQ obviously has a long history. And what you can see is that we've been involved in various water treatment projects and plants a long time ago already. But over the last decade, you could say that the focus really has been a lot on the Sunrise project that many of you listeners will know very well, to get it off the ground. And around 2007, we also looked at our water portfolio and reoriented that towards the model we're now pursuing, which is provide integrated technology solutions. So we did that by putting our patents together, also improving some areas, doing more testing and piloting, and even buying some additional patents we felt fitted very well with our current portfolio. And on the back of that, we then signed our first commercial sized contracts to build those plants. And that's what we've been doing mostly over the last 5 years, building these plants, making sure they work, making sure customers are satisfied. And it's only on the back of that that we started to build our commercial team, so a proper dedicated commercial team. So we've had that in place now for almost 2 years in Australia. We're only just building that in China. And this is now going to provide the basis on which we're looking forward to the next few years and looking forward to our phase of growth. And we're confident about that. We do honestly believe that our technology portfolio is unique in the world. There will be very few companies, there are very few companies in the world that are in water treatment that have such a broad portfolio of innovative solutions that have been tested and tried in the market. And we're looking forward to you existing shareholders and new shareholders to join us on this path. Thank you for your attention.